The chamber floated in the darkness of space like a crown of silver and glass. 12 species had gathered here to decide the fate of humanity, and none of them looked pleased. Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the center of the council floor with his hands clasped behind his back. His uniform pressed and perfect, even though his heart hammered against his ribs. Ambassador Lisa Grant stood beside him. Her face calm, but her fingers trembled slightly as she held the datapad containing Earth's final appeal. They had spent 3 months preparing their defense, and Jake knew with sick certainty that it would not matter. Overlord Krenth rose from his seat at the head of the council. The Vraxian's forearms spread wide in a gesture that might have been welcoming if his eyes were not so cold. His scales gleamed under the chamber, lights like polished obsidian, and when he spoke his voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The Galactic Council has reviewed the evidence regarding the human species, Krenth announced, his words echoing through the vast chamber. A border patrol from the Vraxian Empire encountered human vessels in the Tertian sector. The humans fired upon our ships without provocation. 3 Vraxian warriors died that day. Jake wanted to shout that it was a lie, that the Vraxian ships had been the aggressors, that his people had only defended themselves. But he remained silent because interrupting the council head was a death sentence. Humanity has proven itself too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to remain on their world, Krenth continued, his tail lashing behind him. We have seen species like yours before, young and aggressive, thinking that strength comes from weapons and anger. You have achieved faster than light travel only 50 years ago, yet you already seek to expand your territory and challenge established powers. Lisa touched Jake's arm gently, and he realized his fists had clenched so tight that his nails cut into his palms. He forced himself to breathe slowly and steadily. The council will now vote. Krenth declared. One by one, the representatives of the 12 species activated their voting crystals. Red light bloomed across the chamber like drops of blood in water. The Vraxians voted red for removal. The Korthan Empire voted red. The Silicate Collective voted red. The pattern continued until Jake stopped counting. Only one crystal glowed blue in opposition, and Jake was not surprised to see it came from High Curator Zethus. The ancient being species had been traveling the stars when humans still lived in caves. Zethus had always shown humanity a strange kindness that Jake had never fully understood. One species abstained, and their crystal remained dark. 10 votes for removal, 1 against, 1 abstention, Krenth announced with what might have been satisfaction. The decision is final. Humanity will evacuate Earth within 48 hours. Any humans remaining after that deadline will be removed by force. This is wrong, Jake finally spoke, his voice cutting through the murmurs that followed the vote. My people were defending themselves. The Vraxian ships entered our space. They fired first. We have evidence. Your evidence has been reviewed and dismissed, Krenth interrupted. The council has voted. The decision stands. You have 48 hours. Lisa stepped forward, and her voice was steady despite the fear Jake could see in her eyes. Overlord Krenth, surely we can negotiate. Perhaps humanity can agree to certain restrictions. Monitoring of our space, limitations on our fleet size. Anything but forced removal from our home world. Krenth's laugh was like stones grinding together. You misunderstand, human. This is not a negotiation. This is a verdict. Your species will be relocated to a suitable world far from established space lanes. You will be monitored and contained. This is mercy. Many on the council voted for complete elimination. The words hit Jake like physical blows. He had known the council was hostile, but he had believed reason would prevail. He had been a fool. If I may speak, Zethus' voice was soft, but it carried through the chamber like wind through leaves. The ancient curator stood slowly and every eye turned to watch. I wish to formally register my opposition to this action. Humanity is young, yes, but they are not what you believe them to be. They are dangerous, yes, but not in the way you think. I have studied their history and their culture, and I tell you now that forcing them to leave their world will have consequences none of you anticipate. Your opposition is noted and dismissed. Krent said flatly, "You are outvoted, curator. Your fondness for these primitives does not change their nature." Zethus met Jake's eyes across the chamber, and something passed between them. A warning, perhaps, or maybe just an acknowledgement of shared helplessness. Commander Kao Chun's voice crackled through Jake's earpiece. "Private channel, emergency protocol, Admiral. Our sensors are picking up massive energy signatures throughout the solar system. The Vraxians didn't wait for the deadline. They are already here." Jake's blood turned to ice. He touched his earpiece to respond, but kept his face neutral. "How many ships?" "Over 5,000. Kyle's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "They are positioning near Mars. Jupiter, the asteroid belt. They have Earth surrounded." "Admiral, what do we do?" Lisa had heard it too through her own earpiece. Her face went pale, but she stood straighter somehow, and Jake loved her for that courage. "The Vraxian fleet has already taken position in your solar system," Krent said. Confirming what Kyle had reported, Admiral Vex commands 5,000 warships equipped with weapons capable of scorching your planet to bare rock. I tell you this not to frighten you, but to help you understand the futility of resistance. Your species has 73 combat vessels. You cannot win. You cannot even slow us down. The number was exactly correct, which meant Vraxian intelligence was better than Earth had believed. Jake made his face stone and his voice iron. "You would destroy billions of innocent people. We would prefer not to," Krent replied. "Which is why you have 48 hours to evacuate. Of course, moving billions of humans in that time is impossible, but we expect you to make a good faith effort. We are not monsters." Jake wanted to laugh at that, wanted to scream, wanted to do anything but stand there and accept this death sentence for his species. Instead, he reached into his uniform pocket and pulled out a small communicator, Earth-made. Encrypted beyond anything the Vraxians could break, he typed 4 words with steady fingers, even though the world was ending around him. "Protocol 7. Authorize immediately." He sent the message and slipped the device back into his pocket. Lisa saw him do it, and her eyes widened slightly because she knew what Protocol 7 meant. Every human in the command structure knew. It was the final option, the last desperate gamble. The thing they did when there was no hope left. "You have your deadline," Krent was saying. "I suggest you begin evacuation procedures. This council is adjourned." The crystals around the chamber dimmed, and the representatives began filing out. Some looked satisfied, others uncomfortable. A few would not meet Jake's eyes. Zethus approached slowly, and when he spoke, his voice was pitched for Jake's ears only. "They have made a terrible mistake," the ancient curator said. "They believe they know what humans are because you look soft and weak and emotional. They think your tears mean you are broken easily. They do not understand that sometimes the softest things are the hardest to destroy." "Will it matter?" Jake asked quietly. "Perhaps," Zethus replied. "Perhaps not, but I wanted you to know that one voice spoke for you today. One voice will remember when this is over." The curator moved away, and Jake was left standing with Lisa in the emptying chamber. She took his hand and squeezed it once. "Did you really authorize Protocol 7? She whispered. "Yes. Then God help us all." "God," Jake said softly. "Or something else." They walked out of the council chamber together, knowing that in 48 hours, Earth would either be saved or humanity would cease to exist. The Vraxian fleet waited in the darkness, and back on Earth scientists were preparing something. The galaxy had never seen the council expected humans to fall within hours of the attack beginning, but they did not know what desperation could create. They did not know what Protocol 7 meant. They would learn soon enough, and by then, it would be too late. General Ryan Cooper had not slept in 36 hours, and he did not expect to sleep again until this was over one way or another. The command center buried deep beneath. The Colorado mountains hummed with activity as hundreds of officers coordinated the defense of Earth. Screens showed the Vraxian fleet spreading through the solar system like a disease, and each red dot represented enough firepower to level a continent. Encrypted message from Admiral Morrison had arrived 4 hours ago. 4 simple words that carried the weight of extinction. Protocol 7, authorize immediately. Ryan had stared at those words for a full minute before his hands moved to enter the authorization. Codes Dr. Emma Santos entered the command center with dark circles under her eyes and coffee stains on her white lab coat. She was the lead scientist for the Quantum Warfare Division, and she looked like she had aged 10 years in the past day. General, she said quietly, the array is ready. Or as ready as it will ever be. Ryan gestured for her to join him at the main tactical display where Admiral Sophie Hayes was coordinating Earth's pitifully small fleet. Captain Ben Foster's stealth ship had just transmitted new intelligence on Vraxian positions, and none of it was good. Show me. Ryan said. Emma pulled up a holographic display that showed a structure hidden beneath the Antarctic ice. The quantum entanglement displacement array looked like a massive spider web made of crystal and light. Power conduits ran deep into the Earth's core, and the whole thing pulsed with barely contained energy. We built it based on theories that shouldn't work, Emma explained, her voice tight with stress. The idea is that consciousness itself creates quantum entanglement. Every thought you have creates a tiny ripple in quantum space. Normally, these ripples are too small to matter, but if we amplify them and link them together, we create a weapon. Ryan finished. Not exactly, Emma corrected. We create a bridge. The array will link every human mind on Earth and in the solar system into one massive quantum network. Just for a few seconds. And then that network can reach outward through quantum space to touch other minds. Sophie Hayes looked up from her tactical display, and her expression was grim. You are talking about force telepathy. More or less, Emma admitted. The calculation suggests that if we activate the array at full power, every human will briefly experience a kind of collective consciousness. And that consciousness will be powerful enough to make contact with the Vraxian fleet. Contact them how? Ryan asked, even though he suspected he knew the answer. They will experience us, Emma said simply. Our thoughts, our memories, our emotions. Everything that makes us human will flood into their minds all at once. The shock should be enough to disable their fleet. Should be, Ryan repeated. You have never tested this at full scale. We tested it on volunteers, Emma said defensively. 12 humans linked together for 5 seconds. They all survived, but they said it was the most intense experience of their lives. One of them described it as feeling every emotion of every person simultaneously. Another said it was like becoming 12 people at once. And you want to do this with 8 billion humans, Sophie said, and then push that combined consciousness at 5,000 alien warships, Emma added. Yes, I know how insane it sounds. A new alert flashed across the tactical display, and Sophie cursed softly. The Vraxians are broadcasting. Admiral X is demanding Earth surrender. Put it on screen. Ryan ordered. Admiral X appeared on the main display. The Vraxian commander was massive, even by his species standards. His scales were marked with battle scars, and his forearms moved with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. People of Earth. X's voice was surprisingly smooth, almost gentle. I am Admiral Dex of the Vraxian Imperial Fleet. My orders are clear. You will evacuate your planet within the time given by the Galactic Council. If you refuse, we will force you to comply. I take no pleasure in this, but I will not hesitate. He paused, and his eyes seemed to look directly through the camera. I have studied your species. You are warriors, yes. Brave perhaps, but you are also foolish. You have 73 ships against my 5,000. You have primitive weapons against technology that could tear your world apart. There is no shame in surrender. There is only shame in dying for pride. The transmission ended, and the command center fell silent. Ryan could hear the blood rushing in his ears. How long do we have? He asked. Based on their positioning, Sophie replied. Checking her displays. 6 hours until they are in optimal firing range. They will offer one more chance to surrender, and then they will attack. 6 hours, Ryan thought. 6 hours to save the human race or doom it to extinction. Captain Ben Foster's voice came through on the tactical channel. His stealth ship was hidden near Mars, observing the Vraxian fleet. General, they are not just positioning around Earth. They have forces moving toward the Mars colony and the asteroid mining facilities. They plan to hit everything simultaneously. They want to make sure we cannot rebuild, Sophie said. Total annihilation in one strike. Ryan made his decision. He had known what it would be from the moment he received Morrison's message, but saying it out loud still felt like stepping off a cliff. Authorize Protocol 7, he said clearly. Notify all civilian populations to seek shelter, evacuate the orbital stations, and prepare the array for activation. Emma's face went white. General, I have to be honest with you. The calculations are theoretical. We cannot guarantee this will work. We cannot even guarantee it will not kill everyone who participates. If we do nothing, the Vraxians will kill us anyway, Ryan replied. At least this way we have a chance. A chance to do what? Sophie asked. Disable their fleet, save Earth. Yes, but at what cost? You were talking about linking 8 billion minds together without their consent. Forcing them to participate in a weapon they do not even know exists. Ryan met her eyes and did not look away. I know exactly what I am asking, and I will carry that weight for the rest of my life, however long that is. But if Protocol 7 works, our species survives. If it fails, we die as we would have anyway. There is no good choice here. There is only the choice that gives us a future. Sophie held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded once. I will coordinate the evacuation of civilians from the orbital platforms. If we are going to do this, we should at least try to minimize casualties. Emma was already on her communicator, speaking rapidly to her team. Activate the secondary sites in Australia and Chile. Begin the power-up sequence. We need 6 hours to reach full charge anyway, so we might as well start now. The command center erupted into controlled chaos as orders were given and received. Ryan watched it all and felt the weight of what he had authorized settle onto his shoulders like a physical thing. A junior officer approached hesitantly. General, the civilian networks are reporting panic in major cities. News of the Vraxian fleet has leaked. People are demanding to know what the government is doing. Tell them the truth, Ryan said. Tell them we are defending Earth with everything we have. Tell them to trust us. The officer nodded and hurried away. Ryan knew that trust was a precious thing, and he was about to break it in ways most people could not imagine. Emma returned, and her face was set with determination, even though her hands still shook. The array will be ready in 5 hours and 40 minutes. We will have a 20-minute window to activate before the Vraxians attack, General. Are you absolutely certain about this? Ryan thought about his daughter who lived in Seattle, about the billions of people who trusted him to keep them safe, about the choice between certain death and desperate gamble. I am certain, he said. Across the solar system, the Vraxian fleet continued its advance. Admiral Vex sat in his command chair and reviewed the attack plans. His tactical officer reported that all ships were in position and weapons were charging to full power. The humans have not responded to our surrender demand. The tactical officer said, they will, Vex replied. When they see our weapons power up, They will understand that resistance is futile. If they do not, then we will teach them. Either way, this ends in 6 hours. But Admiral Dex did not know about the array hidden beneath Antarctic ice. He did not know about Protocol 7, or the desperate scientists working to save their species. He expected humans to break easily because they looked soft and weak in 6 hours. He would learn how wrong he was, and by then it would be too late to stop what was coming. The countdown had begun, and humanity was preparing something the galaxy had never seen. Something that would end the war not in hours, but in seconds. Storm was approaching, and neither side fully understood what was about to happen. There, Emma Santa stood in the control room of the array facility and watched the clock count down the final minutes. Her team moved around her with practiced efficiency, but she could see the fear in their eyes. Everyone here knew they were about to participate in something that had never been attempted, and might never be attempted again. Lieutenant Chris Park sat at the main control station with his fingers hovering over the activation sequence. He was 24 years old, and he looked like he might be sick, but his hands were steady. Power levels at 98%, he reported. Secondary sites in Australia and Chile are synchronized and ready. We have green lights across the board. Emma checked her own displays and saw that he was correct. The array was drawing power directly from Earth's magnetic field, and the energy readings were almost beyond measurement. If this worked, they would make history. If it failed, they would likely destroy the facility and everyone in it. 3 minutes to Vraxian weapons discharge. Sophie Hayes' voice came through the speakers from her ship in orbit. General Cooper has given final authorization. You are clear to proceed on your mark. DeSantis. Emma took a deep breath and activated her communicator. This is Dr. Santos to all array personnel. We are proceeding with activation. May whatever higher power exists have mercy on us all, on the Vraxian flagship Admiral. Dex watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Every ship in his fleet was in position, and weapons were charged to maximum power. The humans had not surrendered, which was disappointing but not surprising. They would learn their lesson the hard way. Target the major population centers first, he ordered. Beijing, New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow. Make it quick and clean. No need for unnecessary suffering. His tactical officer began inputting firing solutions, and Dex allowed himself a moment of regret. He had read about human culture and found some of it beautiful. Their music particularly had a haunting quality. It was a shame they were too violent to coexist with civilized species. All weapons ready, the tactical officer announced. Firing on your command. Fire. Dex said. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, Emma watched the countdown reach 0 and screamed the activation command. Now. Activate now. Chris slammed his hand down on the control, and the array came to life. For a fraction of a second, nothing happened, and Emma thought they had failed. Then the world turned inside out. Every human being on Earth and throughout the solar system felt it simultaneously. A sudden awareness that they were not alone in their own minds. It started as a whisper and grew to a roar. 8 billion individual consciousnesses suddenly aware of each other, connected by quantum entanglement that stretched across space like invisible threads. Emma felt her daughter's fear in Seattle, felt her mother's love in Denver, felt strangers' joy and pain and hope and despair all at once. She was still herself, but she was also everyone else. 8 billion perspectives collapsing into one impossible moment of unified awareness on Mars colony, a maintenance worker named Danny Carter felt his wife on Earth holding their newborn son, and he wept with joy even though he had never cried before. In the asteroid mines, a woman named Patricia Lee felt her brother's pride in her accomplishments and forgave him for their childhood arguments. Across Earth and beyond the walls, between human minds dissolved. The collective human consciousness hung in quantum space for 3.7 seconds. Massive and confused and terrified and determined, Then it did what Emma had predicted. It reached outward, instinctively seeking to understand the threat that had brought them together on. The Vraxian flagship Admiral Dex saw his weapons discharge and felt satisfaction. Then something hit him like a physical blow. His mind was suddenly full of images and emotions that were not his own. He saw a human mother holding her baby and feeling love so intense it was painful. He saw a human soldier dying on a battlefield and feeling fear but also courage. He saw a human artist creating something beautiful just because beauty mattered. The flood of human consciousness crashed through his neural pathways, and he could not block it, or fight it, or even understand it. He experienced 1,000 lifetimes in seconds, felt joy and sorrow and rage and compassion, understood what it meant to be born fragile on a dangerous world and survive through cooperation instead of conquest. Every member of the Vraxian fleet experienced the same overwhelming contact. 5,000 ships full of warriors suddenly drowning in human thoughts and human feelings. Their weapons powered down automatically as their crews collapsed under the psychic weight. Captain Megan Torres commanded the defense ship Valiant, and she felt the array activate from her position near Earth's moon. Her mind opened up and connected to her crew and to every human in the solar system. She felt their combined fear transform into something else. Not anger, but determination. Not hate, but the absolute refusal to die quietly. Then she felt the connection reach the Vraxians, and she gasped as enemy minds touched hers. She experienced Admiral Dex's confusion and his growing horror as he realized what humans truly were. Not warriors seeking conquest, but survivors seeking safety. Not monsters, but people protecting their home. The connection lasted 3.7 seconds in total. Then it snapped like an overstressed cable, and every mind returned to itself alone and small and confused. Emma came back to herself lying on the floor of the control room with blood running from her nose. Chris was crying silently at his station, and other team members were in various states of shock. She forced herself to stand on shaking legs and check the displays. "Array is offline," she said hoarsely. "Quantum matrices are burned out completely. We could not activate it again if we wanted to. Did it work?" Chris asked through his tears. Emma pulled up the tactical feed from Sophie's ship, and her breath caught. The Vraxian fleet was still there, but every ship showed zero weapons activity. They were drifting in space with running lights on, but no other signs of function. "Sophie," Emma called. "What is happening up there?" "I do not know." Sophie's voice was shaken. She had experienced the array activation like every other human. "The Vraxian ships are not responding to hails. They are not moving. They are just floating there." Captain Nicole Wright led a boarding team from her ship toward the nearest Vraxian vessel. Her hands were still shaking from the psychic contact, but her training kept her focused. If the Vraxians were disabled, this was their chance to secure the ships and prevent any further attacks. "Stay sharp," she told her team. "We do not know what we are walking into." They breached the Vraxian airlock and found the crew conscious but unresponsive. Vraxian warriors sat at their stations with distant looks in their eyes. Some were crying, which Nicole had not known was possible for their species. She found Admiral Dex on the bridge, sitting in his command chair and staring at nothing. When she approached, he slowly turned to look at her, and his eyes were completely different from before. There was no hostility in them, only a kind of terrible understanding. "I felt your grandmother die in your arms," he said quietly in perfect English. "I felt your grief. I felt how much you loved her. I felt everything." Nicole's grandmother had died 2 years ago, and Nicole had been holding her hand when it happened. The memory was private and painful, and somehow this alien commander had experienced it. "What did you do to us?" Dex asked. "What was that?" "We defended ourselves," Nicole replied. Her weapon still raised, but her finger off the trigger. "You were going to destroy our world. We showed you who we are." Dex stood slowly, and his forearms hung limp at his sides. "We cannot fight you," he said. "How can we fight you when I know your memories? When I felt your mother's pride when you graduated from the academy. When I experienced your first kiss and your first heartbreak. When I know you better than I know my own warriors." All across the Vraxian fleet, similar scenes were playing out. Human boarding teams found alien crews overwhelmed by the psychic contact, unable to reconcile their mission to destroy Earth. With the intimate knowledge they now had of human lives and human hearts on Earth, General Ryan Cooper received reports of the disabled Vraxian fleet and felt relief so intense it made him dizzy. Then he felt the crushing weight of what he had authorized. 8 billion people had participated in the array activation without their consent. Their minds had been used as weapons without their knowledge. "We won," Sophie said over the communicator. "General, we actually won. The Vraxian fleet is disabled. Admiral Lex is ordering his ships to stand down. They are surrendering." Ryan closed his eyes and felt tears run down his face. "Get me Admiral Morrison on the Galactic Council. Tell him it is over. Tell him we survived." At the Galactic Council chambers, Ambassador Jake Morrison received the message and felt his knees go weak with relief. Lisa caught his arm and they held each other while the council around them erupted in chaos. Overlord Krenth was shouting demands for explanations. Other council members were arguing. But High Curator Zethus sat quietly and watched the humans with something that might have been approval. "What did you do?" Krenth finally demanded directly of Jake. "What weapon did you use on the Vraxian fleet?" Jake stood tall and met the Overlord's eyes without fear. "We did not use a weapon," he said clearly. "We used understanding. We showed them who we are. We gave them no choice but to see us as people instead of targets. That is all." "That is not possible," Krenth insisted, but his voice was uncertain. The Vraxian fleet hung in space like broken toys scattered across the solar system. Admiral Sophie Hayes coordinated recovery operations from her command ship and tried to make sense of what had happened. Her own experience of the array activation was already becoming dreamlike and distant, but certain moments remained vivid. The feeling of connection to billions of other minds. The brief moment when she had not been Sophie but had been everyone. Captain Wright reports that Admiral Lex is cooperative, her tactical officer announced. He's ordering his fleet to power down all weapon systems and accept human inspection teams. Sophie nodded slowly. Her head still ached from the psychic contact, and she suspected every human in the solar system felt the same. "What about casualties?" "Preliminary reports show 0 deaths on either side," the officer replied. "Some injuries from people collapsing during the array activation, but nothing serious. The Vraxian crews are physically unharmed, 0 deaths." Sophie thought they had won a war without killing anyone, and somehow that made it feel more surreal than if there had been. Traditional Battle Captain Nicole Wright walked through the corridors of the Vraxian flagship with Admiral Lex following behind her like a lost child. The massive warrior, who had commanded 5,000 ships, now moved hesitantly and kept looking at Nicole with something like wonder. "Your name is Nicole," he said suddenly. "Your mother wanted to name you Sarah, but your father insisted on Nicole after his grandmother. You hated the name as a child, but grew to love it when you learned your great-grandmother had been a pilot in the old wars." Nicole stopped walking and turned to face him. "How do you know that?" "I felt it," Lex replied. "When your minds touched ours, I experienced your memories. I know that you wanted to be a dancer before you joined the military. I know that you are afraid of deep water because you nearly drowned when you were 7. I know that you call your father every Sunday and lie about being happy because you do not want him to worry." The invasion of privacy should have made Nicole angry, but instead she felt a strange kind of understanding. "You experienced all of that in 3.7 seconds. It felt like years," Lex said. "I lived pieces of thousands of human lives. I felt a mother's love for her child, a teacher's pride in her student. A farmer's satisfaction in his crops. I felt what it means to be human, and now I cannot unknow it. Nicole studied the alien commander and saw genuine confusion in his eyes. Is that why you surrendered? How could I not? Vex asked. I gave the order to destroy your cities, to kill billions, but then I felt what it would mean. I experienced the fear of the people who would die. I felt their love for their families, their hopes for the future. I felt everything, and I could not do it. No warrior in my fleet could do it. So the array worked exactly as Dr. Santos predicted. Nicole said, Your scientist weaponized empathy, Vex replied. She forced us to understand you, and understanding made us unable to hurt you. Is that not still a weapon? The question hung in the air between them, and Nicole had no answer on Earth General. Ryan Cooper sat in his office and stared at the reports flooding in from around the globe. 8 billion people had experienced the array activation, and reactions were mixed. Some people described it as transcendent, a moment of perfect unity with all of humanity. Others called it a violation, an invasion of their minds without permission. Dr. Emma Santos appeared on his video screen looking exhausted but alive. General, I have the final assessment of the array. The quantum matrices are completely destroyed. We cannot rebuild it without years of work and resources we do not have. For all practical purposes, the weapon is gone. Is that what we are calling it now? Ryan asked. A weapon. Emma was quiet for a moment. I do not know what else to call it. We used it to defend Earth. We disabled an enemy fleet. Those are weapon functions, even if the mechanism was unusual. We violated the consent of every human being alive. Ryan said bluntly. We linked their minds together and used them as ammunition without asking permission. Some people are calling it the greatest crime in human history. Some people are also calling it the greatest achievement. Emma countered. We saved our species, General. The Vraxians were going to kill us all. What would you have done differently? Ryan had no answer to that. He had made the choice he believed was necessary, and he would live with the consequences. Ambassador Jake Morrison addressed the Galactic Council from the floor of their chamber. The council members looked shaken and uncertain, which was a dramatic change from their arrogance days before. Overlord Krent sat in his seat, but his earlier confidence had evaporated. The Vraxian fleet has surrendered, Jake announced formally. Admiral Vex has sent a message to this council stating that the Vraxian Empire withdraws all claims against humanity and requests a ceasefire. On what grounds? A council member from the Korthan Empire demanded. They had overwhelming military superiority. Why would they surrender? Because they experienced what it means to be human, Jake replied. Our defense method created a quantum link between human and Vraxian minds. The enemy fleet experienced our thoughts, our memories, our emotions. They learned who we truly are, and they chose to stand down. You use psychic weapons, Krent accused. Such weapons are banned by galactic law. We used nothing that was banned, Jake said calmly. We created a technological method of communication. We simply communicated on a level that made violence impossible. High Curator Zethus stood slowly, and all eyes turned to the ancient being. I warned you, he said to the council. I told you that humanity was not what you believed. You saw them as primitive warriors, but they are survivors who learned long ago that their greatest strength is not weapons, but connection. They forced that connection. Krent protested. They invaded the minds of Vraxian warriors without consent. How is that different from any other attack? It is different because no one died, Zethus replied. It is different because the result is understanding rather than destruction. Humanity faced extinction, and they found a way to survive without becoming monsters. Can you say the same of your empires? The council chamber fell silent. Jake pressed his advantage. Earth requests full membership in the Galactic Council. We have proven we can defend ourselves. We have proven we seek cooperation, not conquest. We have earned our place here. This is not over. Krent said, but his voice lacked its earlier authority. Captain Ben Foster's stealth ship monitored communications across the Vraxian fleet, and what he heard surprised him. Vraxian warriors were talking to each other in hushed voices about their experience. Some were confused, many were ashamed. A few were calling for cultural exchange with Earth, to better understand the species they had tried to destroy. They are changed, Ben reported to Sophie. You can hear it in their voices. They are not the same warriors who arrived here ready to scorch our planet. Sophie considered that. Maybe that is the real weapon, she said. Not the array itself, but what it does to people. You cannot hate someone whose memories you have experienced. You cannot kill someone whose thoughts you have felt. Admiral Lex sent a formal communication to General Cooper, requesting permission to address the human people directly. Ryan granted it with some hesitation and watched as the Vraxian commander appeared on screens across Earth. People of Earth, Lex began, his voice humble in a way that seemed foreign to his nature. I came to your system to destroy you. I believed you were a threat that needed to be eliminated. I was wrong. He paused, and his forearms moved in a gesture that his species used to show sincerity. Your scientists showed me your lives, your loves, your losses. I felt what it means to be human, and I cannot unknow it. I cannot return to seeing you as targets or threats. You are people, and I very nearly murdered billions of you. The broadcast reached every corner of Earth and beyond. Humans watched in silence as their would-be destroyer apologized. The Vraxian Empire formally requests a ceasefire and cultural exchange. Lex continued. We wish to learn from you, to understand you better. 17 of my warriors have requested permission to remain on Earth to study your culture. I am one of them. The transmission ended, and Ryan sat back in his chair feeling the weight of history settling around him. They had won the war without firing a shot. They had turned enemies into something else. Not quite friends, but no longer enemies either. 3 days after the array activation, a human woman named Katie Sanders approached a Vraxian warrior in the medical bay where both were being treated for psychic contact after effects. The warrior's name was Thelx, and he had been part of the boarding crew preparing to seize Earth's orbital stations. I felt you during the contact, Katie said quietly. I felt your fear of disappointing your commanders. I felt your pride in your skills. I felt your love for your bondmate back on Vrax Prime. Thelx looked at the human woman with surprise. You remember specific individuals. Some, Katie admitted. The contact was overwhelming, but certain minds stood out. Yours was one of them. You were planning to show mercy to any humans who surrendered quickly. You did not want to kill if you could avoid it. I was a warrior following orders, Thelx said. I told myself that made it acceptable. You were a person in an impossible situation, Katie replied. Just like all of us. They sat together in silence, and across Earth and the Vraxian fleets, similar conversations were beginning. Understanding was spreading. 3 months had passed since the array activation, and the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The Galactic Council chambers had been rebuilt on neutral ground, with humanity now seated as a full member. Ambassador Jake Morrison wore his formal uniform and stood beside Ambassador Lisa Grant as they prepared to present Earth's proposal to the Council. The chamber was different now. More open somehow. The air of superiority that had once filled the space had been replaced by something closer to caution. The Council members knew they had misjudged humanity badly, and none of them wanted to make that mistake again. Curator Zethus called the session to order, and his ancient eyes swept across the assembled representatives. We gathered today to discuss the events of 3 months ago and their implications for galactic civilization. Ambassador Morrison, you requested this session. Jake stepped forward and felt the weight of billions watching through live feeds across the galaxy. Thank you, Curator Zethus. I stand before you today not to defend humanity's actions, but to propose a new way forward for all species. Overlord Krenth had been removed from his position as council head for his role in the failed attack on Earth. In his place sat a Vraxian named Cortex, who had opposed the war from the beginning. But Krenth still attended as a regular council member, and his face showed barely controlled anger. Earth requests that the council establish new protocols for first contact and diplomatic relations. Jake continued. Protocols based on understanding before action. Communication before conflict. Fine words, Krenth said bitterly. But they do not change what your species did. You invaded the minds of 5,000 Vraxian warriors. You violated them in ways that weapons never could. And now you stand here asking for rewards. We defended ourselves, Lisa said firmly. Stepping forward to stand beside Jake, you gave us a choice between extinction and desperate action. We chose to survive. If that makes us criminals, then convict us. But know that we would make the same choice again. Dr. Emma Santos appeared on the central display, transmitting from Earth. Her face was thinner than it had been, and her eyes carried shadows that had not been there before. Members of the council, I designed and activated the Quantum Entanglement Displacement Array. If there are crimes to answer for, they are mine. I forced 8 billion humans to participate in a weapon they did not know existed. I violated the consent of every person on Earth. The chamber was silent as Emma continued. I also saved those 8 billion people from certain death. I gave humanity a future. The array is destroyed now. I personally deleted all the research data so it cannot be weaponized by anyone. What happened can never happen again. Why did you destroy the data? A council member from the Silicate Collective asked. Surely such a powerful weapon would be valuable, because it should never be used again, Emma replied. What we did worked, but it came at a terrible cost. The people of Earth experienced forced mental connection. Many of them are still dealing with the psychological effects. We won the war, but we also learned that some weapons should not exist even if they could save us. Admiral Dex rose from his seat in the visitors' gallery. He was no longer a fleet commander, but he had been granted permission to address the council as a cultural liaison between Vrax Prime and Earth. If I may speak, Dex said. His voice carrying across the chamber. Curator Zethus nodded permission and next descended to the council floor. He moved with less certainty than he once had, but with more purpose somehow. I commanded the fleet that was meant to destroy Earth, Dex said. I gave the order to fire on their cities. I was ready to kill billions without hesitation, because I believed humans were a threat that needed to be eliminated. Then the array activated, and I experienced what it means to be human. He turned to face the council members directly. I felt a human mother's love for her child. I felt a human soldier's fear in battle. I felt a human artist's joy in creation. In 3.7 seconds, I lived pieces of thousands of human lives, and I learned something that no amount of intelligence reports could have taught me. Humans are not threats to be eliminated. They are people to be understood. You were brainwashed, Krenth accused. The array changed you against your will. It showed me the truth, Dex corrected. It forced me to see humans as they truly are, instead of as I imagined them to be. Yes, it was done without my consent. Yes, it was invasive and disturbing, but it also prevented a genocide. I cannot regret that, even if I sometimes wish I could. Jake watched the council members and saw them struggling with the contradiction. Humanity had committed an act that was simultaneously defensive and violating, had saved lives by invading minds, and won a war by refusing to fight it in traditional ways. The Vraxian Empire supports Earth's proposal for new first contact protocols, Dex continued. We have learned a harsh lesson about the dangers of assumptions. 234 humans have volunteered to live among my people, to teach and learn. 17 of my warriors remain on Earth for the same purpose. This exchange has already begun to transform both our cultures. A new voice joined the discussion. Captain Alex Turner appeared on another display. He commanded the exploration vessel Unity, which was the first ship crewed by both humans and aliens. His crew included 3 Vraxians, 2 members of the Silicate Collective, and 12 humans. I speak from the Unity, currently 3 light years from Earth on a survey mission, Alex said. My crew has been working together for 2 months, and I can report that cooperation between species is not only possible but beneficial. My Vraxian crew members bring tactical expertise that has saved us from 2 dangerous situations. My Silicate crew members have computational abilities that enhance our scanning efficiency. Together we are more capable than any single species could be alone. The council members murmured among themselves, and Jake saw the moment when the tide began to turn. They were curious now instead of hostile. Uncertain instead of arrogant. General Ryan Cooper joined the transmission from Earth's command center. He looked older than he had 3 months ago, but his voice was steady. The cost of Protocol 7 was high, he said. Many humans feel violated by what was done. Some have called for my arrest. I accept that anger because it is justified, but I also stand by the choice I made. Given the same situation, I would authorize the array. Again, because the alternative was extinction. That is easy to say now that you won. Krenth said. It would be easier if we had lost, Ryan replied. Then I would be dead and would not have to face the consequences. Instead, I am alive, and I must live with what I authorized. I must face the people whose minds I used as weapons. I must accept their anger and their fear. That is the price of survival, and I pay it gladly. Lisa stepped forward again, and her voice carried clearly through the chamber. Earth does not ask the Council to forgive what we did. We ask only that you understand why we did it. We were given 48 hours to evacuate 8 billion people or watch them die. We chose a third option that no one expected. If that makes us dangerous, then perhaps you are right to fear us. But consider this. We had the power to destroy the Vraxian fleet after we disabled it. We could have taken revenge for their attempt to exterminate us. Instead, we offered mercy and partnership, because you knew the galaxy was watching. Krenth said, because it was the right thing to do, Jake corrected. Humanity is not perfect. We have made terrible mistakes in our history. We have fought wars and committed atrocities. But we have also learned that the strongest weapon is not the one that destroys, but the one that connects. That understanding is more powerful than hatred. That even enemies can become partners if given the chance. Curator. Zethus stood slowly, and the chamber fell silent out of respect for the ancient being. I have lived for 3,000 of your years, he said. I have seen species rise and fall. I have witnessed wars that scorched entire sectors and peace that lasted for centuries. In all that time, I have never seen anything like what humanity did. He paused and looked at Jake with something that might have been approval. You were faced with extinction, and you chose not to match violence with violence, but to make violence impossible through understanding. You forced your enemies to see you as people, and in doing so, you ended a war in seconds. The Council feared you because you seemed primitive and aggressive. Now, we should fear you for a different reason. Because you have shown us a new kind of strength. You fear us. Jake asked. I fear what your example might do to the established order, Zethus replied. For millennia, the galaxy has been organized around military power. The strongest fleets rule, the weakest submit. You have introduced a new variable. The power of enforced empathy, the ability to make enemies understand each other. If that becomes common, the entire structure of galactic civilization will change. The implications of that statement rippled through the chamber. Jake felt the weight of it and understood for the first time the full scope of what humanity had done. We do not seek to change galactic civilization, Lisa said carefully. We seek only to survive and to find our place among the stars. If our example inspires change, that is not our intention, but we will not apologize for it either. The Council voted on Earth's proposal for new first contact protocols. The vote was not unanimous, but it passed with 8 in favor, 3 against, and 1 abstention. Jake felt relief wash over.